Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. The small town of Maplewood had never been a storybook setting. But it was a quiet place where news traveled at the speed of a whisper. Nestled between towering oaks and sprawling fields, the community thrived on the familiarity of its residents. But everything changed on the morning of April 15, 2020. As dawn broke, sunlight streamed through the latticework of branches, casting dappled patterns on a modest bungalow at the end of Walnut Street. There, tucked away in its pastel façade, lay the tranquil home of Eleanor Hayes, a soft-spoken widow and beloved librarian. The town collectively held its breath as sirens shattered the silence, flickering red and blue lights illuminating the morning mist. Neighbors gathered outside, eyes wide with confusion. Eleanor had been found lifeless in her living room, her delicate frame crumpled against a pile of books she had cherished. The scene revealed a grim tapestry box, scattered like forgotten thoughts, a coffee cup resting precariously beside her, half full and cold. Investigators combed through the home, their brow furrowed with determination as they catalogued every detail, noting the absence of forced entry. What initially appeared to be a tragic accident or natural death began to unravel into something dark. The fluttering pages of Eleanor's journal hinted at secrets buried deep beneath the surface of her seemingly idyllic life. And so Maplewood, with its picture-perfect streets, was forced to confront an unsettling truth. Sometimes, darkness lurked just beneath the veneer of tranquility. As whispers of Eleanor's death rippled through the town, a sinister question hung heavy in the air: who had silenced its gentle librarian? The victim? Eleanor Hayes was not a stranger to Maplewood. She was part of its very fabric. For over 20 years, she had served as the town's librarian, with a penchant for baking and a soft chuckle that danced in the air like sunlight filtering through leaves. She effortlessly wove connections among the people she cherished. Residents would often find solace in the inviting scent of old books mingling with fresh pastries at the library's monthly book club meetings. Growing up in a modest family, Eleanor had learned early on the value of community. After the untimely passing of her husband Frank, a local school teacher, she poured herself into helping others, mentoring children, organizing events, and fostering a love for reading. Yet beneath her warm exterior lay a reservoir of untold stories. Secrets she tucked away like dog-eared pages in a forgotten novel. As investigators delved into her life, they unearthed a timeline of events leading to her death. Eleanor had appeared restless in the months preceding her demise. Friends recalled her often staring out the large window in his study, lost in thought, as if she was searching for something just beyond her reach. The excitement of a book launch would only brighten her spirits briefly. Soon, she would revert to her contemplative state. Moreover, her journal hinted at an evolving tension in her life. In delicate script, her handwriting revealed frustrations about a neighbor, rumors of property disputes, and a once close friendship tarnished by misunderstanding. But whether these matters held any weight in Eleanor's tragic end remained a chilling mystery. As her story unfolded, Maplewood began to realize that the image of their beloved librarian was not as uncomplicated as they had cherished, leaving many to wonder who truly knew Eleanor Hayes, and even more hauntingly, who might have wanted her gone. The crime scene, The yellow tape flapped in the breeze, separating the crime scene from the curious onlookers gathered on the lawn outside Eleanor's home. The air was thick with apprehension, and the sharp scent of disinfectant mingled uneasily with the musty aroma of old wood and paper that permeated her beloved sanctuary. Detective Sarah Mitchell stepped cautiously over the threshold, her keen eyes absorbing every detail, every nuance of the room that had witnessed the final moments of Eleanor's life. The soft light from an overhead lamp illuminated the living room, a picturesque setting now marked by loss. Eleanor lay motionless on the plush warm rug, her frail body nestled among an array of paperbacks, their covers splattered with the remnants of a violent struggle. An initial examination suggested that Eleanor had not only succumbed to death, but had suffered in her final hours. Bruising around her neck raised alarms, pointing to a struggle that had escalated into something irrevocable. Detective Mitchell scribbled notes furiously, keen on capturing the essence of a crime that felt too intimate to comprehend. Surrounding the body were overlapping footprints and a fine layer of dust, leading ominously towards the back door that stood ajar. It was a detail that seemed both trivial and monumental, suggesting a hurried escape, or perhaps an entrance to a carefully premeditated act. As forensic teams collected evidence, the detective noticed a torn piece of fabric caught on the jagged edge of the door. The room felt eerie in its silence, amplified by the distant murmurs of the townsfolk who waited anxiously outside. But within these four walls, there existed a more profound narrative, one that was woven in strands of betrayal, secrecy, and desperation. Books could hold stories, but they could not tell all, leaving an unsettling question suspended above the scene. What had happened on that quiet April morning? And who would bear the consequences of Eleanor's untimely end? The early investigation. Days quickly turned into a blur of interviews and inquiries. Detectives painted the town with canvassing precision, seeking insights from anyone who had crossed Eleanor's path in recent weeks. The warm spring sunlight haloed maple trees as the pulse of Maplewood quickened. Rumors spread like wildfire, clutching at the air with its tales of intrigue and suspicion. Detective Sarah Mitchell began her list of people to interview by reaching out to Eleanor's circle of friends. First on her list was Clara Simmons, a fellow book lover who had been Eleanor's confidante for nearly a decade. When questioned, Clara's demeanor oscillated between emotional and guarded. "I can't believe she's gone," Clara stammered, her eyes glistening. "We talked about everything. She never mentioned feeling afraid or threatened. Not once." But as the conversation drifted into deeper waters, Clara hesitated. But there was a little friction with Mrs. Thompson. You know how she always complained about the noise from her yard work? Detective Mitchell nodded, prompting Clara to elaborate, intrigued by any hint of discord. Clara recalled a heated exchange just days before Eleanor's death. A dispute over property lines involving Eleanor's garden and the overgrown hedges of Ruth Thompson's yard. Eleanor was too kind to confront her directly. She would just sigh and shake her head, and then bury herself in a book, Clara recalled, her voice weary. Next, the detective turned her attention to Eleanor's family ties. They called to Eleanor's estranged sister, Victoria, revealed a convoluted web of resentment and distance. Victoria's tone was sharp and cut through the air when she answered, a mixture of grief and aversion evident in her voice. Their relationship had soured years ago over a family inheritance dispute, a scab that had never healed. As interviews unfolded, the picture of Eleanor's life came into sharper focus, painted in shades of both affection and animosity. Yet, as stories collided with evidence, the deeper question persisted. Was the librarian's life taken by a neighborly quarrel, a family feud, or was there a darkness within her own circle that no one dared to unveil? The night loomed heavy with unanswered questions, the thrill of the investigation only just beginning to grip the town of Maplewood. The dead ends. As the investigation continued, the search for clarity began to resemble a labyrinth with no exit. Detective Sarah Mitchell pieced together fragments of Eleanor's life, but as each lead emerged, so did numerous dead ends that left her frustrated and disheartened. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, the case grew colder. Kara's memories of heated exchanges with Ruth Thompson only seemed to raise more questions than answers. A visit to Ruth's house revealed a modest woman, seemingly harmless, who expressed genuine sorrow over Eleanor's death. "I adored that woman," Ruth insisted, her voice quavering as she recalled shared cups of tea and fruit preserves. How much I loved her garden. There were no signs of hostility here, only grief that did little to ease the investigators' concerns. Meanwhile, Victoria Hayes' whereabouts remained elusive. Each phone call met with the same automated messagetus number. Is no longer in service. The search for her address had produced no records, and the small-town grapevine whispered that she had moved away years prior. The silence from the estranged sister gnawed at Mitchell, who felt a nagging suspicion that unresolved family tensions could harbor a buried secret. Another important lead emerged unexpectedly when a late-night tip-off led Mitchell to the Maplewood diner, where an overheard conversation between two regulars had piqued her interest. They spoke in hushed tones about a mysterious figure seen loitering around Eleanor's house in the nights before her death, a silhouette described only as a man in a dark hoodie. But when summoned for questioning, the diner's staff could offer no further information. Shrugging helplessly at the recollections of their patrons. As spring waned into the clutches of summer, the investigation grew tedious, dominated by whispers without substance. Just as Mitchell felt the weight of the case heavy on her shoulders, she understood that sometimes, in pursuit of truth, the shadows could obscure what was painfully clear. The heartache of a once vibrant town, wrestling with the ghost of a beloved soul lost too, encouraged yet weighed down. She vowed not to lose sight of Eleanor, determined to uncover the truth that lay shrouded behind the facades of those who lingered in her memory. A break in the case. It was a gray Tuesday when the first sign of hope emerged. Detective Sarah Mitchell sat at her cluttered desk in the Maplewood police station, rifling through case files and witness statements that had been meticulously compiled over the past several weeks. But he clung to her, evident in the way frustration twitched at the edges of her brow. Just as she was about to pour herself another cup of stale coffee, a knock at the door jolted her from her thoughts. Officer Jake Hardrow stood at the threshold holding an envelope marked with a bold station seal. "We received this anonymous tip this morning," he said, his voice low and cautious. "Thought you'd want to see it immediately." Curiosity piqued. Mitchell tore into the envelope with a sense of urgency. Inside was a handwritten note, its contents unsettling yet tantalizing. "Look closer at the nights before her death. The answer lies closer than you think." And Allah. Alongside the note was a surveillance photo hastily photocopied, a grainy image depicting what appeared to be the dark figure in a hoodie standing outside Eleanor's home. Mitchell's heart raced as she scrutinized the photo. The figure appeared to be leaning against the fence, gaze fixed on Eleanor's living room window. The date stamped on the corner was just days before the librarian was found dead. The detective's instincts ignited. It was a lead that couldn't be dismissed. The case had stuttered to a near standstill, but with this small breakthrough, the gears of investigation began to churn again. Mitchell swiftly contacted the local hardware store, where she hoped to pull up surveillance footage corresponding to the timestamps captured in the image. As she awaited the video retrieval, Mitchell rallied her team for a late-night meet. They needed to enhance the image, analyze the footage, and track down the figure in the hoodie. Each member of the team were a semblance of newfound hope, a spark igniting where dullness had overwhelmed their spirits, driven by the belief that the past seldom stays buried. Mitchell steered the investigation down a path, pulsing with urgency. Perhaps the shadows would relinquish their grip, and the secrets surrounding Eleanor's life would seep into the light. The strength of hope bloomed again within the weary heart of Maplewood. As the darkness slowly began to unravel, the suspect. The evening air was thick with suspense, as Detective Sarah Mitchell prepared to review the newly acquired surveillance footage. In the dim light of the station, her team huddled around the flickering monitor, eyes locked on the grainy video feed from the hardware store. The name Darren Cordell, a face now etched in their minds, would soon redefine the investigation. As the video unspooled, the team watched intently as a figure in a dark hoodie entered the frame, lingering at the edge of Eleanor's property late one night. The timestamp registered was chilling a few nights before her body was discovered. Mitchell leaned in closer, her focus honed like a blade, as the figure turned slightly to reveal a glimpse of the face beneath the hood. "Wait," one of the officers said, pausing the video. "Is that?" "Yes," Mitchell replied, recognition hitting like a thunderbolt. The young man was Darren Cordell, a local mechanic with a reputation for being a bit of the drifter. His name had surfaced previously, whispered from neighbor to neighbor, but dismissed as mere gossip. However, this photograph was tangible evidence, a connection to Eleanor that demanded scrutiny. Mitchell sought out Darren's employment records and discovered his troubling past run-ins with the law and complaints of erratic behavior that aligned with the timeline of Eleanor's tragic end. He was known to loiter around the library, an unassuming presence that had gone unnoticed among the regular patrons. Within days, Detective Mitchell set up a meeting with him at the diner, where he often slouched over coffee, withdrawn and yet observant. When she arrived, she found him seated in the back booth, fingers tapping nervously against the laminated table. His eyes darted around the diner, as if the walls were closing in. "Darren," Mitchell began, her tone calculated yet empathetic. "I want to talk to you about Eleanor Hayes." The slight shift in his posture told her much. There was something in his demeanor and anticipation, a flicker of dread that suggested he understood why she was there. For the first time, he met her gaze, revealing a darkness behind those once innocuous eyes. "Well, I didn't do anything," he stammered, his voice a mixture of defiance and fear. "Tu was just watching her." "Why?" Mitchell pressed, leaning close. His breath quickened as the walls of the diner closed in around him. "She didn't know, but I could help her," he muttered, his words laced with urgency that both intrigued and alarmed her. The conversation hung in the air, fraught with implication, as Mitchell realized they were standing on the brink of unearthing a tangled web of obsession that could either bring justice or plunge them deeper into mystery. The truth had begun to unravel, and with it the weight of Eleanor's story threatened to expose long-hidden shadows lurking in Maplewood. The trial. The courtroom buzzed with a tense anticipation as the trial for Darren Cordell commenced on a balmy morning in late October. The sun filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the rows of seats filled with townsfolk, eager to see justice served for the untimely death of their beloved librarian. Eleanor Hayes. News cameras captured the proceedings, spreading the story beyond Maplewood, amplifying the intensity of the moment. Detective Sarah Mitchell, now a pivotal witness, sat in the gallery, her heart pounding as she prepared to recount the investigation that had pulled the community into its depths. He had painstakingly pieced together Eleanor's life, the secrets unearthed in the wake of tragedy. But the path toward conviction would hinge on the jury's perception of Darren Hayes' character, his obsession, and the glimpses of a darkness that had stewed unnoticed in their midst. The prosecution painted a damning portrait of Darren. They brought forward friends and neighbors who testified to his erratic behavior. Late-night visits, threatening stares, an obsession with Eleanor that had spiraled into something both alarming and profound. Each witness delivered their testimony with a tremor of emotion, reliving the moments leading up to Eleanor's untimely death and painting a chilling picture of a man who would cross an unforgivable line. The defense, however, argued for Darren's innocence. They claimed that he was merely an introspective young man who admired Eleanor as a figure of light in a town that often felt dark. They challenged the prosecution's narrative, attempting to cast the notion of obsession as nothing more than a misunderstood appreciation. Darren sat at the defendant's table, his expression a convoluted mix of defiance and vulnerability. As the trial unfolded, tension tightened in the courtroom. Detective Mitchell took the stand, her testimony laying bare the connections she had made. With unwavering resolve, she shared the evidence: the dark figure in the hoodie, the motive of longing turned fatal. The chilling words Darren had uttered about wanting to help Ellen. In closing arguments, the prosecution implored the jury to remember Eleanor not just as a victim, but as a vibrant voice now silenced. They invoked the image of her gentle spirit, the laughter that once filled the library, now drowned out by the specter of violence. For days, the jury deliberated, the weight of their decision hanging heavily in the air. The corners of Maplewood bristled with curiosity and dread, whispers of uncertainty woven through the community fabric. When the jury finally returned, the courtroom held its collective breath. "Guilty," the foreman pronounced, echoing through the room. And with those words, a community exhaled, knowing that justice had found its way home amidst the shadows. But as the gavel fell, and Darren was led away, a lingering unease settled over Maplewood. They would never forget Eleanor Hayes, nor the haunting truth that reminded them of the darkness lurking within even the most peaceful façade. The aftermath. As the gavel fell and silence enveloped the courtroom, the ripples of Darren Cordell's conviction resonated throughout Maplewood. For weeks, the town grappled with the aftermath of Eleanor Hayes' tragic fate, an event that left an indelible mark on its collective memory. In the days that followed the trial, life began to pulse anew through the street. The library, once a beacon of knowledge and warmth, remained closed as the community mourned its loss. Signs of grief lingered like shadows. Flowers adorned the front steps, poignant reminders of the nurturing spirit that had graced their lives. Detective Sarah Mitchell, while relieved at the verdict, felt a weight pressing against her chest. Justice had prevailed, yet the void left by Eleanor's passing echoed painfully in the lives of those who had come to cherish her. In the evenings, She often found herself wandering to the library's entrance, recalling Eleanor's laughter, the smell of freshly baked goods, and the comfort of familiar voices discussing the latest reads. The town came together in remembrance. A memorial service was organized in Eleanor's honor, filled with heartfelt tributes that painted a vivid picture of the life she had lived. Countless children she had inspired with tales of adventure, the elderly who found solace in her smile, and inspired with tales of adventure, the elderly who found solace, the vibrant community that had rallied around her love for literature. But healing was a slow journey. As residents shared stories of Eleanor, they began to confront their own vulnerabilities, their trust, the mask war in every interaction, the unforeseen darkness that could spiral into heartbreak. The town turned inward, its people recognizing that they too had to navigate their own shadows. Neighbors extended friendly hands to one another, forging connections that had lingered dormant. There watched this transformation, touched by the resilience of her community. She knew that, amidst the cacophony of grief, there was a chance for renewal. Eleanor's legacy began to take shape. A campaign birthed from the Eleanor's Reads set out to promote literacy programs in her name, fostering a love for literature across generations and ensuring that his spirit would endure within their hearts and minds. As the final leaves of autumn fell, Maplewood, reminded of its fragility, stepped into a new chapter. The grief would never truly vanish, but among the echoes of sorrow lay seeds of hope, a testament to the power of community and an enduring love for a life that had inspired so many. Detective Mitchell found strength in the healing of her town, understanding that even in the aftermath of loss, there lay an opportunity to forge deeper connections, lighting the way forward, one story at a time. Reflection. As the frost settled over Maplewood, Detective Sarah Mitchell found herself reflecting on the journey that had unfolded, a poignant narrative laced with heartache and resilience. The trials and tribulations of Eleanor Hayes' tragic story unraveled like the chapters of a book, each page revealing a complex human experience that transcended the boundaries of the courtroom. Standing on the library steps, now draped in the colors of autumn, she felt the bittersweet nostalgia tug at her heart. Eleanor's absence resonated deeply, yet a quiet strength emanated from the community, whose spirit seemed to bind them tighter than ever before. Mitchell had witnessed a shift. Neighbors learned to communicate their fears and joys, embracing vulnerability in the face of uncertainty. Eleanor had been more than a librarian. She had been a thread in life's intricate tapestry, and while the passing of time muted the sharpness of grief, it also nurtured the seeds of connection. As the first snowflakes began to fall, she understood that healing was not about forgetting the pain, but carrying it and transforming it into something meaningful.